Today's subject is transformation of the heart. And I thought I would talk about this subject because last Thursday at the Gita class, we had a very interesting conversation. And it had to do with how to have the experience of God's presence. And the sense that we have to be great yogis and great meditators in order to experience God's presence. And in the path of Raja Yoga, we do emphasize meditation as basically the cure-all. If you meditate deeply enough, then all problems can be solved. And this is true. But if you can't do perfectly what you believe you should do, then you have to figure out what else you can do in order to make up the difference. Remember the story that Yoganandaji told about the bhakti yogi who came to him, and this man had practiced deep devotion for over 20 years. And he was satisfied with his path, but he had not quite attained his goal. He had not quite felt that he had attained the vision of the divine. And he was not sure what to do. And he spoke to Yoganandaji, and Yoganandaji said that if he would just practice Kriya, he would make that final leap. He'd be able to break through. And we have always used this story to support the practice of Kriya Yoga. But there's another lesson here that we need to keep in mind. And that is that the results of this fellow taking Kriya, in a very short period of time, he attained the vision of God that he saw. So that means what he was doing was really working. He was very close. And oftentimes we think that we're much further away from that which we seek inwardly than we actually are. The practical reality is that there is nothing closer in life than God. God is the essential closeness. God is the only thing that can be close. This is interesting because everything in life is perceived at a distance. Why? Because we perceive it through the ego. When we experience life through the ego, we're alone and everything else is distant. But when we experience life through the soul, everything is close. Because in our experience of the divine, we experience oneness, not separateness. And then everything becomes God. So, how do we focus our attention on the practical realities of where we're at? Now, each of us, and this is kind of connected to this afternoon's class on Raja Yoga, but I'll try not to make it too much the same. The key is to understand that, well, like a child. When a child is very young, we say the child is childlike. And when we say that, we mean that the child is open and totally positive about everything that can be accomplished, and quite surprised when they don't get what they want. Children think that everything should be theirs. And if mom and dad don't give them what they want, at first they're shocked. It's like, what do you mean? What's wrong with you? And then, of course, they begin to apply energy to their desire through their will, and that supports ego consciousness, separateness. And this is what we learn when we're growing up. If you want to get what you want in the world, You have to impose your will, your personal energies will, on the world itself in order to get what you want. So, and one of the ways a child learns this, and Yoganandaji supported this, sometimes you should allow your child to accomplish their goal through the power of their will, even though you may not be completely supportive of what they want. You're supportive of them developing their willpower, because we need willpower in order to achieve any goal in life, including our spiritual goals. But we need to understand that the use of the willpower through the ego is a very has its own limits, and is by definition separate from the goal that we seek. Even though God is acting through us as an ego, we have to break past the ego in order to experience the divine perception. So we live in the ego, which is individual and separate, or at least we perceive it that way. And we seek to commune with spirit, which is infinite and the central reality of all life. So we're starting here, we're trying to get there. Now, we all have been told that we are souls. Master described the soul as individualized spirit. So we are all spirit. This is our nature. What is our nature? Spirit. And what is the nature of spirit? Love, joy. The answer to every question. The fulfillment of every need. But when people are young spiritually, they're coming from the ego, so that when they relate to God through the ego. So what they do is they basically consider God to be the larger parent. And how do most kids relate to the parents? Here's what I want. This is what I want. And then, seeking the fulfillment of what I want. So when people come to God, then, and this is East and West, in a younger, less mature view of the spiritual life, is that we come to God to seek the fulfillment of our desires. And the teachings of how to accomplish this were given because the divine view as well, it's better to include God in the fulfillment of your desires than to exclude God. Now, many people today do exclude God, but Karmakand, the whole idea, and in Christianity, they have what were called indulgences. And basically, you in the case of indulgences, you paid to get out of trouble because you didn't want to go to hell forever for any mistake that you might have made. So you basically paid the fine financially, and which of course is ridiculous. But nevertheless, this was where the people went. That's ego perception. Now, just because, as a side note, just because these people were drawn into an untrue teaching, if they had the right consciousness, then the money was secondary. If they genuinely regretted their action and made a conscious change in their consciousness, and they left those mistakes behind, then it was useful, even though it was not a true teaching in terms of the way it was being used by the church. Now, we all know that an important aspect of the spiritual life is devotion. But why do we have devotion? Why do we have, we're supposed to love God. But how can we love something that we don't know? So, well, I don't know God, so why should I love God? Well, we have to go back to who and what we really are. We're spirit. We are the very love that we're supposed to be loving. It's not separate from us. We can't perceive that totality, but it is our reality. But like any scientist, if you can't perceive it, then you have to figure out a way. And science built machines, has built machines in order to observe. The mechanism that we use to observe spiritual truth is inside of us. We use the soul. But in order to do that, we have to begin to have less ego perception and more soul perception. How do we do that? Well, we do things that will begin to free us from ego consciousness. And by the very definition of becoming freed from ego consciousness, then we automatically begin to perceive what's there without ego. It's not like we need to really seek God's love. What we need to do is release ourselves from ego. But one of the ways that we describe freeing ourselves from ego is to seek God's love. So one of the things to understand about the ego is that you have to direct it in a positive direction. You can't just leave it alone. You have to utilize the ego. You know the story, you have to use a thorn to take out another thorn. You know, and this is in the same way. We use the ego to free ourselves from the ego. So how do we use the ego? One of the ways that we use it is the nature of the ego. Remember Patanjali's definition. Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the neutralization of the vrittis, the whirlpools of feeling. So one of the essential binding aspects of the ego is our feelings, our likes and our dislikes. And tying ourselves to those likes and dislikes, our desire to have what we want, our desire to not have what we don't want. We have to free ourselves from these desires. So this is the essential truth. It's the release of all these desires. So we talk about nishkam karma. We talk about action without desire for the fruits of your action. We talk about giving up your personal desire in all life circumstances. But this is very difficult because you still have to act. So when we act, who are we acting for? Our own personal interests, our ego interests, or God's interests, the truth, Dharma? And are those always opposed? This is one of the things we really have trouble with is, well, you know, I think this is the right thing to do. But is this God's will or is this my will? And is my will God's will or my will? This will take me away from God or towards God. Well, in the beginning, we don't have our own personal life experience, the trust of that, to trust ourselves. And of course, this is one of the values of the Sangha, because when you're around others, you get a sense of when your actions aren't quite right, and you see everybody going, then you know that, you know, wow. Or you meet others and you become inspired by them. You say, wow, I see that they just had this calamity in their life, but they didn't get upset by it. And that inspires us to go, oh, well, maybe I can learn not to be so upset by every little thing. And then eventually, when I've practiced that for some time, I won't be upset by bigger things. But remember that the powerful way to change our lives is to put energy in the direction of our goals. Energy's got to flow that way. If you want to have a relationship with another person, if you want to create success in business, if you want to have a garden or paint the walls, you have to put out energy. So we have to put out energy in the direction of our goal of being freed from the ego, freed from desires, so that we can experience our natural state. Remember Sri Teshwar was saying, we want to experience the natural love of the heart. So this is one of the confusing things. We've talked about this before, the difference between the feelings of the ego and the feelings of the soul. The soul's feelings are rooted in divine love. The ego's feelings are rooted in personal desire. So I personally desire this person. I personally desire this thing, whatever. And if I don't get it, then I'm mad at it. I'm angry because I haven't gotten what I want. And we're allowed to do that, but that way of living leads to aloneness, separateness, limitation, and most importantly, not experiencing God's love. So Jesus made this whole process so incredibly simple. Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, so they shall see God." Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So when we talk about wanting to know God, to experience God, we have to understand that the way to have that experience is to have a pure heart. How do we have a pure heart? We get rid of our personal desires and gradually begin to attune ourselves to God's view of Dharma in any given situation in life. Now, there's some very practical things that we can do in order to do this. And one of the most important, even though if we don't naturally have the love of God, remember, you're not trying to love a being that you've never met. You're basically loving love. And the more you enter into loving love, you experience that love. And that is the goal. We think that we're going to get a vision one day, and okay, that's true. We'll have a breakthrough. You'll see infinite love. But the fact is that the more we experience love connected to the soul, rather than the ego, although in the beginning it's ego-directed, it's feelings. So we talk about devotion. We develop devotion, but we've got to take devotion, which starts as feelings that might lead to crying and yearning and anticipation, to calmness and silence. This is the real key. A lot of people whip up their emotions. This is not divine love. In order, if you want to verify an experience, you have to perceive that it has taken you to calmness. It has to take you to expansion of consciousness, not to expansion of emotions. And so when you see these, in America we call them holy rollers, and the Christians who, they speak in tongues and they get all excited, and next thing you know they're down on the ground twitching. Because they've created an internal emotional excitement. Now, you have to say they are committed, because they'll fall down and look funny in front of anybody. But they also may be down there saying, "Hey, look at me, I've got the Spirit." You don't really know. And maybe some of those experiences are true experiences, but by and large they're not. Because they come from the application of the ego towards the emotions, not towards universal perception. The pure in heart has to be connected to universal heart, not the heart of the ego. So, devotion it starts as devotion, but a bhakti, but it becomes prem. It becomes the divine love. And this is the key to understand. This is how we're going. But we apply the ego, we apply ourselves in the direction of open-heartedness. We don't have to say, "Lord, I love you." We say, "Lord, life, Lord, I'm open to you." And I'm so open that my heart, like a child, is open and innocent and pure. And in that, let me see what will happen. Because we're not required to have a belief that we have not experienced. But we know that if the heart is not open, we can't, as Teshwar again said, you can't take one step on the spiritual path without love. This is so essential. So, Jesus also said, "Suffer the children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of God." It's not, childlike love is not intellectual. It's not, oh, I know, it's not Vedanta. It's not Jnana Yoga. It can be, but it's not required to be. Because in the end, again, as Sri Yukteswar said, after explaining it all in a very logical way, thus I've proved that God is love. It's this love, however you get to it, through your actions, through your devotion, through your attunement to truth, and through your meditation practice. So remember, all of these aspects lead to the same place. So if you're not the greatest meditator on the earth, that doesn't mean you can't come close to God and experience God's presence. You take that way of approaching God that is best for you, that allows you to open your heart and feel freed from personal desire. If that works for you in action and service, then that will be the larger part of what you do. There was a woman who lived at the ashram at Mount Washington with Yoganandaji. I think she was Swedish, Norwegian or something. She just worked in the garden. She said, I love the flowers. She had this accent. She was simple. She was not steeped in the scriptures. She was not meditating 8 hours a day. But Master said she would know God in this lifetime. We have a preconception about what it needs to look like. And again, we emphasize meditation, we emphasize Kriya Yoga because it is such a powerful tool. But there was this terrible, tragic story in America not long ago. It's so strange, a sign of the times. This American fascination with guns. And this young 9-year-old girl had been taken to the firing range. There's nothing wrong with that. Master even had a BB gun at the Lake Shrine sometimes to scare the birds away, but he never tried to shoot one of them. But in any case, her family took her there. They gave her this automatic firing weapon. And when she hit the trigger, she went, and she ended up killing her instructor. It was just one of the classic cases of life getting out of control when we don't use a little bit of common sense. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and then it explodes into disaster. And this is what happens when we don't direct our minds with common sense in ways that are beneficial to us. If we want to experience divine love, we have to be childlike but not childish. We have to use common sense. We have to direct ourselves in ways that we can actually do. This little girl, she didn't know it, but she couldn't do it. So if you're having trouble with your Kriya practice, I'm not suggesting that you don't do it, but don't put all of your eggs in that basket. Don't think that that's the only thing that you can do. And then seek help in how to improve it. Admit it, say, hey, this is not being as successful as I would like. How can I improve it? Meditate with the other Kriya Bhani. Talk to one of the acharyas about making sure you're doing it right. One of the greatest benefits is the Sangha is meditating with other people. When you see them doing it, you go, well, if they can do it, I can do it. Maybe not as well, but I can go along and I can, all of us at Ananda, we were so happy to be with Swamiji because we really felt like we were riding his coattails. So, go Swami, go! And we're just like holding on because we know that he's going to make it, and we if we don't stop clinging to him, we're going to make it too. And this is part of what we do in the Sangha, is to support each other. So to create this purity of heart, we have to do the things that work for us. And Master said, half the battle, What's half the battle? Chanting. Chanting is half the battle. And in the beginning, chanting is singing a song. But eventually, it becomes the song of your heart. And it expands, it becomes the song of life itself, of God itself, singing through your consciousness. It's not personal in the sense that it's universal. But simultaneously, it's the most personal because it's the most central reality. This is one of those things that the mind can't. How can it be both? How can it be personal and impersonal? But there you have it. The most impersonal in the sense that, see, the ego impersonal is, I don't care about you. I only care about me. But in the soul, it's we are one. We are one infinite consciousness of bliss. There is no separateness. So it's the same words and sometimes, but they mean different things. So the practice of devotion through chanting, and chanting can be bhajans, but chanting is also the use of the mantra and the practice of japa. So who is there here who can't free the mind to practice japa? Free the mind. The only reason we don't is from restlessness. It's not because we can't do it, it's because we're restless, we're agitated. So what do we use? We use God's gift of the CD, the portable music. But instead of, when you're in the car, you see it in America, you hear it go boom, 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 and you feel boom, 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 you know. But you see here, for the devotee, it's, Jai Guru. For the devotee, it's all of this wonderful music that Swamiji's given us. An incredible variety. And each and every one a pathway to the divine. And Master said the chants that he wrote, he spiritualized. That means that as he chanted the chant, he chanted it until he experienced a divine experience through it. And that's what we need to do. We need to chant the chants until we have a divine experience. That's not Kriya. Although it's connected to Kriya because singing is pranayama. We don't think of it that way, but we're controlling the breath. It's pranayama and our energy flow. And we're opening the heart, we're directing it to God through the spiritual eye. Singing is pranayama. What's the song? Pranayama is the pathway to the divine. So, when you think about your own spiritual life and you think, well, why haven't I yet, quote unquote, broken through to experience God's presence in my life? It has to do with, well, these analogies come to me. It's like a young fellow who has fallen in love with a girl, but he's never approached her. He's too shy. He's unsure of himself. So he's got a crush. He got all of his thoughts every day, all the time, and looking to see her, wants to talk to her, but he never does anything. Whose fault is that? Better to get rejected than to not take a chance. And this is the key in the spiritual life. You've got to take a chance. You have to open your heart. And it's the very opening of your heart that leads to freedom from ego. You have to take a chance. But we're not asking you to take a chance of belief. We're asking you to take a chance of, as Master put it, undreamed of possibilities. Undreamed of possibilities. Have a pure heart. Live in a way that leads to this divine experience of love and bliss. Don't wait to become the perfect meditator, but remember, the deeper you meditate, the more powerful your devotion will become. And this practice of Raja Yoga, all aspects, but we have to make it our own. So what I'm saying is, yes, practice Kriya. Kriya is, in cars, if the motor has certain potential, but if you put what's called a supercharger on it, it takes it to a whole nother level. And you don't always use it. The supercharger is not on all the time, generally speaking. But if you turn the supercharger on, this is Kriya. But remember, as I was saying before, that the foundation of the spiritual life is the opening up of your heart and in attunement to the Guru. This is key. So every discussion ends up back at attunement to the Guru. Because the Guru is our most valuable supporter in the spiritual life. The Guru is our father, mother, friend, beloved, in a personalized form. And God the Father, God the Mother, Divine Mother, they're invisible, universal. But the Guru, in spite of, in our case, not being in the physical form, is the channel through which our spiritual life is. It's the supercharger of the supercharging. Again, it takes it to a whole nother level. So I really want to encourage those of you who feel that your meditation practice is not as good as you would like it to be. And again, I can tell you when I came to Ananda, my practice was terrible. I mean, I was, just out there by myself. No focus, sincerity, but no real focus. But when I came to Ananda, the environment supported my efforts. And this is one of the reasons we need to create spiritual community, and we need to have retreats together. If you come on retreat, those experiences will gradually take your meditation to a higher level. But don't feel that the other things that we do are not important. They are essential. Because the practice of Kriya by itself will not lead to self-realization. You also have to have devotion and attunement to the Guru. These are essential components. Half the battle, chanting. And all of the things that we do as that, again, japa. Take one of the chants, take one of the mantras, take anything that inspires you and repeat it. Make it the background noise of your mind during the day. Everybody can do that to some degree. And if you do a little here and a little there, and eventually it all grows together. We don't know how close we are. We really don't. But we know that by definition God is present. So let us open ourselves up to that presence. Open our hearts. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Trust that. Live it. And inevitably your life will be led to that experience of the divine love.